When her entitled sister sues her for the cost of a childhood she never chose, April Sanders steps into a courtroom battle that fractures her family, but ignites her fight for independence. What begins as a bitter legal dispute spirals into years of emotional warfare, inheritance greed, and shocking betrayals. But April refuses to be a pawn in her family's drama. With quiet strength and relentless courage, she reclaims her future, brick by brick, boundary by boundary, and finally, by love. Most people think family is where love is unconditional, support is unshakable, and forgiveness flows freely. But my name is April Sanders, and I learned, very painfully, that sometimes family is where the deepest wounds are made. It all started with an unexpected letter. I was at work, wrapping up a project for my firm's annual audit. As a senior financial analyst, precision was everything. But nothing could have prepared me for the storm that arrived that afternoon, a certified envelope addressed to me in sharp clinical script. Inside, a legal notice, a lawsuit, filed by my parents. They were suing me for the cost of raising me. You read that right. My parents, Susan and Gerald Sanders, were demanding reimbursement for all the expenses they incurred raising me, from diapers to high school tuition. I was 32. I lived independently, had worked hard for my career, and paid off my college loans on my own. I didn't ask for anything, but now they wanted tens of thousands of dollars. Why? Because they said I had abandoned my family. Because I refused to help pay off my sister Hannah's mortgage. My hands shook as I reread the letter. My vision blurred. I couldn't make sense of it. Hannah was my younger sister by 3 years. We'd once been close, or so I thought. But after she had kids, the family dynamic shifted. My parents doted on her, always justifying her irresponsible spending and stepping in whenever she faced consequences. I, on the other hand, was expected to shoulder burdens quietly, to give, and give because I was doing well. Months before the lawsuit, my parents had approached me with a request, more like a demand, to co-sign a second mortgage for Hannah. Her husband had left, she was underwater on the house, and they claimed she couldn't manage on her own. I had politely but firmly declined. I didn't want to tie my finances to her volatility. That decision sparked fury. Phone calls turned cold. Visits stopped. At a family gathering, my mother loudly said I was selfish and ungrateful. I walked away, but apparently they weren't done. Now they were taking it to court. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and deeply hurt. I couldn't concentrate at work. I barely slept. My grandparents, my father's parents, were the only ones who stood by me. "Don't you worry, sweetheart," Grandpa said as he sipped his tea in their cozy kitchen. "This isn't about you. It's about them, their pride, their control." We hired a lawyer, a woman named Laura Gilson. Calm, brilliant, and fiercely protective. She read through the complaint with a mixture of disbelief and disgust. "They have no legal basis for this," she assured me. "This isn't going to go the way they think." Still, the trial loomed. Every day leading up to it was agony. I kept remembering birthday parties, holiday dinners, trips to the lake, memories I thought were warm and real. How could those same people turn on me like this? The courtroom was cold and clinical. My parents sat across from me, eyes filled with disdain. Hannah was there too, smug and silent. The judge was a stern, no-nonsense woman named Justice Haywood, the I. Proceedings were surreal. My parents claimed they'd made financial investments in raising me and deserved returns. Their lawyer tried to paint me as an ungrateful daughter who'd refused to help when my family was in crisis, but our lawyer dismantled it, piece by piece. She brought in my financial records, showed how I had contributed generously in the past, including helping Hannah with rent after her first divorce. She highlighted that my parents had gifted Hannah tens of thousands of dollars while I received nothing. The narrative shifted. I watched my mother squirm. My father clenched his jaw. And Hannah? She refused to make eye contact. Then came my turn to speak. I stood, knees trembling, voice barely steady. "I love my family," I began. "I never thought I'd be standing here defending myself against the people who raised me. But I cannot be punished for setting boundaries. I'm not a bank. I'm not their backup plan. I've built a life for myself, and I deserve to live it without guilt or fear. The room was silent. The judge looked over her glasses and said, "This court finds the plaintiff's claim to be entirely without merit. The defendant, Ms. April Sanders, has already contributed far beyond any obligation. Case dismissed." I broke down in tears. Outside, my grandparents hugged me tightly. "You did great, sweetheart," Grandpa whispered. "Don't worry about any of this nonsense." But it wasn't over. The week after the dismissal was the longest of my life. I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept returning to the courtroom, to the expressions on my parents' faces, and to Hannah's entitlement. Had I been wrong all these years about our relationship? Had I imagined that we were ever close? We returned to court for the final ruling, but the judge didn't waste time. After reviewing the evidence again, she began, "I find the plaintiff's claim against the defendant to be without merit. Mr. and Mrs. Sanders, the financial responsibility of parenthood does not entitle you to reimbursement once your child becomes an adult. The evidence shows that Ms. April Sanders has already provided significant financial support to both you and her sister." She paused, looking directly at my parents. "Frankly, I find your behavior toward your daughter to be brazen and disappointing. This lawsuit is dismissed." Relief washed over me. It was over. They couldn't force me to pay for Hannah's house or reimburse them for raising me. As we left the courtroom, my grandparents congratulated me. "We're proud of you for standing your ground," Grandma said. But then my mother approached one last time. "You should be ashamed," she said, her voice trembling. "You just celebrated your family's defeat in court." My grandmother turned to her daughter. "Susan, that's enough. The court made the right decision. Accept it and move on." I walked away, feeling lighter than I had in months. The battle was over. I had won, or so I thought. A week later, my grandparents called. "April, we need to tell you something," Grandma said, her voice tired. "Your mother came to us yesterday. She asked us to give her her inheritance now so they could pay off Hannah's mortgage." I sat down, suddenly exhausted. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that we haven't decided who gets what in our will and that everyone will find out after we're gone," Grandma replied. She cried and begged us not to disinherit her, even after the lawsuit, even after the judge had ruled in my favor. They were still trying to find ways to get money for Hannah's house. Would it ever end? 6 months passed. With the lawsuit behind me and my family keeping their distance, I was finally able to focus on what I'd been saving for all these years. My own home. I'd accumulated enough for a decent down payment on a small house in a quiet neighborhood about 20 minutes from my workplace. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. Signing those mortgage papers felt like the culmination of a decade of hard work and sacrifice. Moving in was both exhausting and exhilarating. I spent weekends painting walls, arranging furniture, and slowly turning the empty rooms into a home. For the first time in my life, I felt truly independent. This was my space, bought with my money, decorated to my taste, with no one to criticize or judge my choices. I didn't hear much from my parents or Hannah during this time, and that was fine by me. My grandparents visited regularly, bringing housewarming gifts and helping me settle in. They were my only connection to family news. "Hannah moved back in with your parents," Grandma told me one Sunday as we sat on my new porch swing. "She's renting out the house. She's using the rental income to cover the mortgage payments. Your mother is watching the boys while Hannah works." "At least they figured out a solution," I said, feeling a strange mix of relief and vindication. "Your parents still complain about you to anyone who will listen," Grandma continued, patting my hand. "They say you abandoned your sister in her time of need." I sighed. "Of course they do. Don't worry about it. I've been setting the record straight with the relatives. Some of them are starting to understand your side now. Your Aunt Patty even told your mother to stop bringing it up at family gatherings." It was a small comfort, but comfort nonetheless. At least some of my relatives were finally seeing the situation. Life settled into a pleasant rhythm. I focused on my job, made improvements to my house, and even started dating someone I'd met through work. The drama with my family began to feel like a distant bad dream. Then, a year after the trial, I opened my email to find a message from my parents. My heart raced as I clicked on it, unsure of what to expect. Dear April, we've heard that you bought a house for yourself. Since you now have extra space, we think it would be best if Hannah and the boys moved in with you. It would be much more convenient for them there. Let us know when they can move in. Love, Mom and Dad. I stared at the screen in disbelief. After everything that had happened, the demands, the lawsuit, the courtroom battle, they were now suggesting that my sister and nephews should move into my house. The house I'd saved for years to buy. The audacity was staggering. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a long moment before I finally typed my response. I will not be hosting Hannah or the boys. If you contact me again with these kinds of demands, I will report the harassment to the police. Do not email me again. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I blocked their email addresses, just as I'd blocked their phone numbers months ago. That evening, I called my grandparents to tell them what had happened. I'm not surprised, Grandpa said. They still don't understand boundaries. I told them I'd report them for harassment if they kept it up, I admitted. Was that too harsh? Not at all, Grandma said firmly. You have every right to live your life in peace. I just don't understand why they keep pushing, I said. Haven't they learned anything from all this? Some people never learn, Grandma replied sadly. Your mother has always favored Hannah, ever since you were little girls. It's not fair and it's not right, but it's how she is. We talked a while longer, and by the time we hung up, I felt calmer. My grandparents had become my rock through all of this, the family I could count on when my parents and sister had proven themselves unworthy of that title. A year passed after I blocked my parents' email, and the silence was both golden and eerie. Life without the constant pull of obligation felt spacious, like a house where every room suddenly had windows. I breathed more freely, I worked with greater focus, I laughed without hesitation, I loved with less fear. Michael, the man I'd started dating from work, had become a steady presence in my life. He was patient and kind, never pressuring me for more than I could give. After years of emotional exhaustion, his calm steadiness was like water to a thirsty plant. I bloomed under his warmth. We'd been seeing each other for 8 months when he brought up the idea of moving in together. We were sitting on the couch, my cat Clover curled between us when he said, April, I love you. I love this home you've made. I'd be honored to share it with you, only if you're ready. I looked around the space I'd poured myself into, the yellow kitchen, the garden bursting with herbs and tomatoes, the bookshelf filled with novels, court briefs, and family photos, mostly of my grandparents and a few childhood snapshots from before everything broke. Was I ready to let someone into this sanctuary? I was. Yes, I said, smiling. Let's build something together. The following months were filled with planning and logistics. Michael sold his apartment and moved into my home. We combined lives with laughter, minor squabbles over drawer space, and shared Sunday breakfasts. My grandparents adored him, especially Grandpa, who declared Michael a good man with an honest handshake. By the time we hit our first anniversary, we were talking about marriage. I'd always been wary of the institution. It had looked so toxic in my own family. But with Michael, it felt like something else entirely. Not a trap, not a transaction, a partnership. Then, as always, just when life was settling, the past crept in like a leak you thought you'd patched. One afternoon, Grandma called. Her voice trembled. April, sweetheart, it's your mother. I braced myself. She's suing us. What? She and Hannah hired a lawyer. They're claiming undue influence. They want the court to invalidate the changes we made to our will, the ones that include you and reduce their share. They say we manipulated them out of what's rightfully theirs. My heart dropped. But they've never even seen the will, I said. How would they know what's in it? They're guessing, Grandma replied bitterly. Your mother always assumed she was getting everything. She can't stand the idea that we'd leave something to you instead. I'll get a lawyer, I said without hesitation. I'm not letting them do this to you. The legal proceedings dragged on for months. My grandparents' health suffered under the stress. Grandma's arthritis flared so badly that she couldn't hold a pen. Grandpa's memory, once a steel trap, started slipping. I visited constantly, attending every hearing, poring over affidavits. Their lawyer was competent but overwhelmed. "I need help," he admitted to me one day after court. "Your mother's legal team is aggressive and relentless. They're dragging this out intentionally." "I'll take a leave of absence," I said. "I've seen enough trials to know how to manage this. I'll assist. Pro bono." He blinked. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "This is my family, my real family." For 3 weeks, I lived out of a suitcase in my grandparents' guest room. I cross-referenced old medical records, found documentation that refuted claims of coercion, and interviewed witnesses who confirmed my grandparents' mental competence. The final hearing was grueling. My mother and Hannah sat smugly across this courtroom. Their attorney argued that I had exerted emotional control over my aging grandparents. He painted me as a manipulator, ungrateful, calculating, but the judge wasn't buying it. After hours of testimony and cross-examination, she delivered her verdict. The court finds no evidence of undue influence. The will stands as written. The plaintiff's claim is denied. My mother turned red. Hannah wept. Grandma squeezed my hand. "Thank you, sweetheart," she whispered. "You saved us." After the trial, my grandparents updated their will again, this time placing everything in a trust that Hannah and my mother couldn't touch. They named me the executor. Michael proposed on our 2nd anniversary. He took me to the botanical gardens, knelt beneath a canopy of jasmine, and presented a simple sapphire ring. "I want to build a future with you, April. One free of manipulation. One filled with love." I said yes. We were married 6 months later in my backyard garden. My grandparents were there. So were my friends, neighbors, and coworkers. Not a single member of my immediate family attended, by choice or by exclusion. It didn't matter. I was walked down the aisle by Grandpa. I wore a pale blue dress and carried a bouquet of marigolds and lavender. When Michael and I exchanged vows, I realized something profound. Family is not defined by blood, but by love and loyalty. A few years passed. My grandparents passed away within months of each other. Grandpa in early spring, Grandma in late summer. Their loss hit me harder than I expected, but I carried their memory into every room of my home, every story I told our daughter, Lily. Yes, we had a daughter. Born on a crisp autumn morning. She has my eyes and Michael's smile. I tell her stories about Grandpa's garden and Grandma's cookies. She calls Clover the cat her big sister. As for my parents and Hannah, I haven't heard from them in years. I sometimes see updates through distant cousins. Hannah's house was foreclosed on eventually. My mother still complains to whoever will listen. But fewer and fewer people care. And me? I live in peace. I work part-time now, spend weekends baking, with Lily, and evenings curled beside Michael, the cat purring nearby. My home is filled with laughter and books and music. Sometimes I walk the garden path Grandpa helped me build and whisper, "Thank you." Because in the end, I didn't just survive the storm, I built a life beyond it.